Thank you, Mr. Chair. You are now live.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council special meeting for Thursday, September the 2nd, 2021. To get underway, I'd like to first of all call the meeting to order, and as well as do a roll call of who's present from council as well as staff. So I'll start off with my neighboring councillor from District 3. Becky, can you hear us?
Yeah, there's a bird chirping in her ears. You know,
She looks
Hello?
frozen.
she looks frozen. Becky looks frozen.
Well, let's go to,
Councillor Kent appears to. We'll just reach out to Corey and see if we can assist Councillor Kent.
all right, let's go on with District 4 then. We'll have District 4 introduce yourself.
That's me. Hi, Mr. Chair. Hi, Community Council. Good to be here. Looking forward to tonight. Thanks.
District 5, please.
I'm here, Mr. Chair, ready to go.
And District 6, please.
I'm here, Mr. Chair, Tony Mancini, District 6. Looking forward to getting some work done.
Thank you. And District 2, back to District 2. Are we present and accounted for now? Hello, Becky, are you there? You may want to turn off your camera.
Hi.
We're having some technical difficulties with you. Seem to be freezing up.
District 3, I'm here. Can you hear me? I'm going to turn my camera off. Can you hear me?
That is much better now that we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes, you were coming across choppy with your camera on.
Okay, I'll leave it off.
All right, and who do we have for staff? Let's go with our solicitor, please.
Josh Judah here. Good evening.
Thank you. And who do we have from our planning applications manager tonight?
Evening, Council. Carl Purvis, Planning Applications Manager.
And who do we have for our fellow planners?
Hi, Mr. Chair, Jacqueline Blill.
Howdy.
And Melissa is here for Planning and Development as well.
Hello. And our recreational planning and project managers. That'd be you, Gareth, and Colin. Is Colin on board tonight? Yes, I see Colin, yeah.
Here, Mr. Chair.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry, Colin. You stepped on each other's toes there.
Quite all right. Just want to make sure we're all here. Anyone else need to acknowledge themselves? I see Micah and Krista are also on board tonight. I guess they're doing the administrative backup. Hi, Krista. Mike, is Micah going to say hello to us at all?
Good evening, Councillor Hensby. I did want to note as well, I have cockatiels here, and every time your birds start going, mine do as well. So it's quite the treat to work from home with you working from home as well.
All right. Okay, let's get on with our meeting then. Okay, we have approval of the minutes of August 5th, please. Have a motion to approve the minutes of August 5th.
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Purdy. Is there a seconder, please?
Second.
Councillor Kent
Second.
seconds. Any question on the minutes? Hearing none, a question on the motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Aye.
Approval of the order of business. Do we have any additions or deletions or changes requested in the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the clerk's office, we have not received any requests for additions or deletions as of this time.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion then to approve the agenda as circulated?
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by
That was Kent and I'll
By
second.
Council.
Councillor Kent, moved, seconded by Councillor Purdy. All those in favor of the agenda as circulated, I'll say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
All right.
Any business arising for the minutes? No business arising from the minutes? Any declarations or conflict of interest tonight? Hearing none. No motions of reconsideration, no motions of rescission, no consideration of deferred business, and no notice of table matters. So we'll carry on the agenda. Our first thing on the agenda is a public hearing, item number 10.1.1, case number 23221, land use bylaw amendment for the Eastern Shore Lifestyle Center at 22324, highway number 7 in Sheet Harbor. We have staff to make the presentation. Jacqueline, please take it away.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, is my having a little bit of a difficult time with the Zoom. Is my screen displaying all right?
Not at the
Also-
moment.
We see you as a part of the gallery, but I don't see a shared screen yet. Would our clerk's office have the same material that they can pop up?
We do have the backup material, Mr. Chair. If the staff would prefer, I can put that up and we can advance the slides by oral keys.
Certainly, if that works. Yeah, I think my Zoom might be going through some sort of update. So if
Your Zoom went boom.
yes. Oh dear.
All right, we have it up now. So if you, as you go through it, you may want to advise the clerk's office when to change it. We have the title page now up.
Certainly. Okay, it's displaying for me on my monitors a little bit minuscule, so I will do the best I can, Mr. Chair. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council. My name is Jacqueline Belil. I'm the HRM planner presenting this application this evening. I'm also joined by Gareth Evans with HRM Parks and Recreation and Colin Walsh with Corporate Real Estate. So if we could advance to slide 2, please. So this is actually an HRM initiated application for a land use bylaw amendment to include institutional uses within the regional park zone. This amendment specifically affects 22324 Highway 7, where a new municipal community facility is being planned. The facility is to include a recreation center, community hall, library, and fire station. In conjunction with that amendment is also an amendment to reduce the parking requirements for municipal community facilities, as well as a few housekeeping amendments to address some outdated references to the former P4 zone that we noticed when we were reviewing the Eastern Shore East land use bylaw for this application. Slide 3, please. So because this is an HRM initiated planning application and an HRM project, I just want to give a brief overview of the history involved with this request. So the need for a new municipal facility comes from roof and structural issues that were identified in 2016 with the existing community hall located at 183 Pool Road. This matter has been the subject of previous staff reports tabled with Regional Council, where the decision was made to proceed with the construction of a new community hall that would also incorporate recreation, library, and fire services. The subject property was identified through a community-led site selection process by the Eastern Shore Lifestyle Center Society, and last year there was direction from Regional Council to acquire the subject property from the province of Nova Scotia. But there was the issue that the existing zoning on the site does not permit the envisioned facility. So in terms of the overall project, the land use bylaw matter that we're looking at this evening is only one component of the overall project, and there are still other matters to be worked through to fulfill the terms and conditions of the provincial purchase and sale agreement. Slide 4, please. So to get into the site context, the map on the left shows the general location of Sheet Harbour with HRM as indicated by the red arrow. The map on the right shows an aerial photo of Sheet Harbour with the site location of 22324 Highway 7 indicated with a yellow arrow towards the top left. Slide 5, please. So this slide shows another map of Sheet Harbour that's intended to give a sense of where the existing public facilities are located in relation to the subject site. So you can see on the map from west to east, the location of the subject site in red, the Eastern Shore Memorial Hospital, the Blue Water Building where the current library and recreation center are located in leased space, existing Fire Station 28, the Marine Drive Academy School, and the Lions Club building on Pool Road, and that's the existing facility. So for scale, I'll just note that the driving distance between the existing Lions Club and the subject site is about 3.6 kilometers. Slide 6, please. So this slide is to provide an indication of the uses surrounding the subject site. notably a picnic park located to the north between the subject site and Highway 7, the McVie House Museum and Elmhurst Apartments to the east opposite the West River Falls, a portion of Elmhurst Drive to the south, which connects to the remainder of Elmhurst Drive via a pedestrian bridge. To the north and the south of this portion of Elmhurst Drive, you can actually see two single unit dwellings that are tucked away there to the east of Highway 7. Provincial land to the south, some of which is subject to a purchase and sale agreement, however, not the southernmost part, which is the location of a reported historic burial site. And this will remain in the ownership of the province, as well as the St. Peter's Church to the southwest of the site opposite Highway 7. Slide 7, please. So this slide is an aerial photo of the subject site taken from the south. I've tried to project the property line boundary onto this photo in yellow. It's not exact. It's meant to be very approximate for general illustrative purposes for this presentation only. On the next two slides, I'll show you some views of the property from street level with this photo as a reference. Slide 8, please. So photo 1 is a view of the site from Highway 7 taken from the north. This provides a view of the northern portion of the picnic park, and you can get a sense of how the land slopes towards the West River Falls. Photo 2 is a view of the site from Highway 224 looking across Highway 7. And in this photo, you can see an informal turnaround spot. Slide 9, please. So photo 3 was taken from the western portion of Elmhurst Drive, and I'll just note for information that Google Maps seems to call this portion of the road Tank Road, but that is not the official name. And photo 4 shows the view of the property from opposite the West River Falls. Slide 10, please. So to provide an overview of the planning policy applicable for this application, the site is zoned Regional Park, abbreviated as RPK, under the Eastern Shore East Land Use Bylaw. It's designated Rural Resource under the Regional Municipal Planning Strategy and Village under the Eastern Shore East Municipal Planning Strategy. Because the regional park zone stems from regional plan policy, it's policy E4 of the regional plan, which enables the consideration of changes to the regional park zone. But it's policy IM10 of the Eastern Shore East Municipal Planning Strategy, which holds the criteria under which staff evaluate the proposed land use bylaw amendment. Slide 11, please. So on this slide, you'll see an excerpt from the regional plan of policy E4. Essentially, the RPK zone is intended to apply to all lands intended for parkland that is regional in nature, regardless of which level of government is the landowner. The zone can differ slightly from plan area to plan area. This is built into policy E4 by how the policy is worded. And you'll note the section of the policy that's emphasized on the slide says that the zone shall permit recreation uses, park uses, and other uses as provided by the existing secondary planning strategies. In the case of the Eastern Shore East Municipal Planning Strategy, institutional uses are enabled broadly across the plan area as of right, and specifically within the village designation where it is intended that commercial and community uses be located. Slide 12, please. So to speak briefly to the regional park zone, as you can see from the excerpt on the slide, there are some elements of the proposed community facility that would be included in the property as of right, such as a recreation center, but not other elements such as the library or fire station. And this is the reason why the land use bylaw amendment application is necessary. Slide 13, please. So this is the definition of institutional use, which is the use that is proposed to be included in the regional park zone. And as you can see, it's a suite of uses that are primarily government owned and operated. And as you can see, it has all of the elements that would be included within the proposed facility. Slide 14, please. So as mentioned previously, staff is also proposing amendments to the parking provision of the land use bylaw related to the proposed facility. This slide just shows what the current parking regulations are for institutional uses. And what this amounts to is that for a facility being proposed, which is expected to be approximately 21,000 square feet, 210 regular parking spaces would be required. Slide 15, please. So this slide shows the preliminary concept plan that was used for public engagement and included in the staff report as map 3. This plan shows lower parking areas that would be needed to meet the current parking requirement. And the next slide shows the current preliminary plan, which reflects the proposed amendments to reduce the parking. And we'll show you the text of that amendment in a few slides. So slide 16, please. So slide 16 shows the current preliminary plan. And as you can see, one of the primary differences here is the elimination of those lower parking areas. The site plan at this point is pretty straightforward. The building is illustrated in orange, the northern portion being the fire station and the southern portion being the community center and library. It shows the driveways coming in from Highway 7, the primary driveway being aligned with the Highway 7, Highway 224 intersection. It shows the parking areas around the building, and it shows the required watercourse buffer applied to the West River Falls. And I would caution that this site plan is intended to be very conceptual, and it will likely to continue to evolve as detailed work on the project continues. With the land use bylaw amendment process, rather than what you would see with the development agreement process, is that the site plan can change following council's approval, provided all the requirements of the land use bylaw are met. So you can think of this site plan as more of proof of concept that the facility could feasibly be located on the site in accordance with the land use bylaw. Slide 17, please. So as you can gather, as planning staff was reviewing this application, it was felt that the current parking requirement was excessive for this proposal. So we consulted internally to determine what the requirements would be appropriate to satisfy our municipal needs. The proposed parking requirement amendment, as shown on the slide, would yield a total of 70 regular parking spaces. And I'll note that this is a minimum requirement. So if operationally more spaces are needed in the future, they could be added as of right. Also, the way the amendment is written, it doesn't affect the parking provisions that would be applicable to other institutional uses, such as churches or daycare facilities. So there's really not much risk that this amendment has any broader implications. Slide 18, please. Another matter that staff picked up on when processing this application was a few housekeeping amendments. So when the regional park zone came into effect in 2006, along with the protected area zone, the provincial park zone, abbreviated as the P4 zone, was replaced. But some references to the provincial park zone were not updated in the land use bylaw. So we still have 4 references to the provincial park zone in text and 3 areas on the zoning map labeled P4. The amendment package contained within attachment A of the staff report will update all of these references appropriately. Slide 19, please. So I mentioned previously that it's policy E4, which allows community council to consider changing the RPK zone, but that it's policy IM10 of the Eastern Shore East Municipal Planning Strategy that's the policy by which staff evaluate proposed changes. So policy IM10 has us looking at a variety of matters, including the adequacy of on-site sewage and water services, the adequacy of road networks, the impact on historic buildings and sites, compatibility with adjacent or nearby land uses, including items such as building height and bulk, lot coverage, traffic generation, access to the site, parking, signage, and locations of water courses. The complete evaluation is included in attachment B of the staff report, but essentially staff are of the opinion that all relevant policy criteria are satisfied with respect to this proposal on this site. Slide 20, please. So further to the specific site, another thing that we look at when we consider including uses within a zone is what are the broader implications for other properties with the same zoning within the plan area. So in the case of the RPK zone, it's not been widely applied across the plan area. Map 4 of the staff report and the map on the slide shows other RPK zoned areas. And this is shown on the slide in yellow with a thick blue outline. There are 33 properties in total that are zoned RPK, but they're very much clustered together. They're also primarily owned by the province of Nova Scotia, who legally do not have to adhere to municipal zoning regulations. So it's felt that the impact on other RPK zoned lands is negligible in this case. Slide 21, please. So in terms of public engagement for this application took the form of a mail-out notification and information sharing through a standard application webpage on halifax.ca. 101 notification letters were sent out, and as of earlier this week, the webpage for this application had 227 unique page views, and of that, the length of time averaged per view was about 4 minutes. In terms of public feedback received, I've had direct contact with 2 individuals, one in support of the proposal and another in opposition. Of the concerns raised, those related to concern regarding a decrease in property value and concern regarding the loss of privacy from adjacent parcels. So slide 22, please. So I started this presentation with the note that this land use bylaw amendment was one component of an overall HRM project. So in terms of next steps following council's decision, if that decision is to approve the amendments, there would be a 14-day appeal period. The other terms and conditions of the purchase and sale agreement for the land would need to be fulfilled. Following the property acquisition, it is the intent of staff to further engage with the community on the specific details of the building design. And once the detailed design is finalized, building permits can be secured and construction can begin. Slide 23, please. So in conclusion, it is recommended that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council adopt the amendments to the land use bylaw for Eastern Shore East as set out in attachment A of the staff report to enable the development of the new municipal community facility within the RPK zone and correct references to the former P4 provincial park zone. And slide 24, please. So thank you, Mr. Chair. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you very much. Since I'm in the chair, perhaps I can ask the vice chair to move the motion on my behalf, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that Harbour East Marine Drive adopt the amendments to the land use bylaw for Eastern Shore East Plan Area as set out in attachment A of the April 28th, 2021 report.
Mr. Chair, I think that we should potentially wait until the public hearing has been presented and speakers have had the opportunity to speak before closing the public hearing by way of motion, and then following that, reading the motion.
Okay, I thought to put the motion on the floor first, and then go to the public hearing. So I just want to make sure whatever is easiest for the clerk. I just want to make sure the motion was on the floor for discussion and for public input. So,
Okay, I'll rescind that and wait.
All right, we'll wait. All right. Also, have you seen in the chat line, I believe our registered speaker for tonight is having some technical difficulties. He got bumped off the waiting queue. So can someone reach out to Mr. Greg Cross and see if we can connect with him by telephone, please, if he can't get on by internet? I sent his phone number in the chat line for everyone to contact him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can confirm that our producers are working on reestablishing the connection.
Thank you. So in the meantime, can I have the motion put on the floor while we're waiting then? Just to get some of the technical stuff out of the way.
Again, Mr. Chair, I believe the procedure as outlined for public hearings is we would have to begin by the process as outlined in the annotated to open the public hearing.
All right. Should the councilors have any questions of staff before the public hearing? Could that be asked for now, Mr. Clerk? Any questions or clarifications by members of council before the public hearing begins?
Yes, I believe that would we can certainly do so.
Thank you. Without the motion being on the floor, then I'll ask if there's any questions or clarifications by other members of the community council before we hear from the public on this matter. Does anyone have any questions? I'm seeing none, so I guess we're clear on that point. So we're just waiting for our technical connections to occur. I know it's been awfully windy on the Eastern Shore. We had a massive power outage in the 3 Fathom Harbour, East Lawrencetown, Porters Lake, West Chesapeake area, but the power is slowly getting restored. Only a few little blackouts left between Porters Lake and Head Chesapeake, so hopefully down further east is not as bad. I see Mr. Cross has now joined us. Hello, Mr. Cross. Can you unmute your phone and join us, please? Hit *6 to unmute your phone. Thank you. Just let everyone know that to speak at today's public hearing, you had to register at 4:30 as of yesterday, and Mr. Cross is the only one that's been signed up for tonight's meeting. Mr. Cross, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Councillor. You can hear me okay? Confirm, please.
Yes, confirm.
Okay. My name is Greg Cross, and I'm representing the Eastern Shore Lifestyle Center Committee this evening. The committee was formed in 2017 to promote and facilitate construction of a new community center for the residents of the Sheet Harbour area. Since 2016, we have not had a year-round community center as a result of roof problems with the existing Lions Hall. It's not usable for about 6 months over the winter period each year. In 2017, the committee identified 15 potential sites for a new facility. Following an extensive evaluation process, the site in question was selected as the optimum location. Part of the evaluation included minimizing the impact on neighboring properties and residents. After beginning the quest for a new lifestyle center, including a great hall, we have received commitments from the local branch of the Halifax Public Library and the fitness center operated by HRM to join with us. In 2020, the HRM Fire Service also recognized the potential for synergies in being located with the Lifestyle Center, and we are pleased that they may be part of this project. Also, in 2020, we secured funding from all 3 levels of government for the construction of the Lifestyle Center portion of the project. The committee initially began the process to acquire the lands, but turned that process over to HRM last year, as was previously mentioned. We believe that this site is unique in its attributes for the use proposed. When completed, the Lifestyle Center Fire Station campus will be a tremendous asset for the local residents and for Halifax Regional Municipality. It dovetails with our existing heritage site to the McPhee House and the adjacent art park. We believe that this use represents the highest and best use for the lands in question. We fully support the amendment to the land use bylaw for the lands in Sheet Harbour such that will allow construction of our new Lifestyle Center complex to move forward. And I thank you for allowing us to make this presentation this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cross. Does any members of Community Council have questions for him? I see none. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and input.
And thank you, Councillor Hesby.
Thank you. Also, the clerk has acknowledged that we had received, our staff had received some correspondence. I believe some correspondence has all been circulated today as well. Mr. Clerk, confirm this on this matter.
Yes, that's correct. There has been some correspondence submitted in this matter, and that has been circulated to all members of Community Council.
Thank you, because I did receive one message by social media, and it wasn't by email. So I believe that person did take the time to notify the clerk's office. All right. So now can I have the motion on the floor, please, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the next stage would be to invite the applicant, in this case, representatives HRM, if they would like to speak in response to or answer any questions arising from the public speaker, and then we would need a motion to close the public hearing, after which point we can put the motion on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I didn't anticipate staff to have any rebuttals, but anyway, I will let the floor go to our HRM staff if they can make any reply or comment to what was presented to them during the public. Garrett or Jacqueline, any comments?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
No comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. May I have a motion then to close the public hearing?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by
Move to
Vice
close.
Chair Councilor Kent, seconded by Councilor Purdy.
Oh, Sam.
All right, now may I have the floor, motion put on the floor, please, Councilor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that, oh, I've got to move some things here. That Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council adopt the amendments to the land use bylaw for Eastern Shore Plan Area as set in Attachment A of April 28th, 2021 report. So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Austin. Are there any further comment or questions or debate on the motion? I'm seeing none, then I'll call for the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Bye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now proceed to the next item of business. Agenda item 10.1.2, case number 21584, development agreement for the lands of 18 Rosedale Drive and Floral Avenue, Dartmouth. May I have the staff to please come forward to make a presentation, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir. I acknowledge I can hear you and see you. Thank you.
All right, I'll try and share my screen here. Are you able to see that presentation there, Mr. Chair?
It is visible, yes.
Excellent. I'll get started. So thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Carl Purvis, Planning Applications Program Manager. I'm here speaking on behalf of the planner on this file, Daryl Jodry, who can't be here tonight, speaking to case 21584, a development agreement for 18 and 24 Rosedale Drive. So the applicant for this application is Fathom Studios, and again at 1822 Rosedale Drive. And the proposal is for two tower components on a joined podium, one tower of which being 11 stories in height with a 4-story street wall, and the other being 9 stories in height with a 3-story street wall. In addition, there are a few ground floor commercial uses amongst both buildings, and a total of 205 units and 184 parking stalls. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the general location of the site. You can see the bridge run up just in sort of the bottom towards the right of the screen in that site, and Wise Road just to the above that circle on the left. And on the right-hand side, more specifically, the site itself, having frontage on Rosedale, as well as Floral, as well as Hester, and backing onto properties that front onto Hester to the south. Some context pictures that Daryl's provided here. This is the subject site, as you can be seen from Rosedale on the left-hand side of the screen. And then the subject site from Fraser Street on the right-hand side. It's just beyond that green and white building, dead ahead of the arrows in the middle of the screen. And again, the subject site from the last approach point in terms of municipal streets, this from Floral Avenue, and the site is straight ahead just beyond that metal bar in the middle of the screen. In terms of the policy and zoning applied to this site, this is zoned as higher order residential within our relatively new regional center land use bylaw, and designated as higher order residential in that regional center municipal planning strategy, package A. The existing uses, a little bit of commercial, a little bit of industrial, a little bit of residential, so a little bit of everything happening on the site presently. And notwithstanding that it's zoned and designated within the center plan, the enabling policies for this application are IP1C and IP5 of the Dartmouth Municipal Planning Strategy, and I'll explain a little bit about why that is the case in just a moment. So this application was here a few times before in front of Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council, first on November 12th in 2020. At that point, staff outlined the proposal within a draft agreement and a report, much largely the same building, and 9 and 11-story towers on a shared podium. The staff report identified a few inconsistencies that staff perceived with the existing policies relating to the character in the neighborhood and its compatibility and consistency of its surroundings. And the presentation, outlined the same in terms of the applicant's proposal and our analysis against the policy. So at that November 12th meeting, Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council decided to defer consideration of that pending a little bit more information, asking what the as of right options would be for the development of the property under the center plan if the existing policies and bylaw were to be applied, and whether the applicant would be willing to consider any revisions to provide a little bit more transition, particularly to the adjacent properties on Hester, Floral, and Fraser Street. So the result of that was a change made by the applicant. On the top of this screen, you can see the original Floral Avenue elevation. And at the bottom of the screen, you can see the revision that the architect and the developer did propose and provide. So this component of the building here, they provided an additional 4-story portion of the building that projected about 2.13 meters from the main tower. And the intent of that projection is to provide a little bit more transition to the adjacent low density use, the house next door. So in essence, it's providing a type of street wall, if you will, and a little bit more of a human scale or a similar scale to the building components next door. To address council's other question, in terms of the as of right development option, these were shown to council in the supplementary report provided. Staff developed 2 possible as of right development options that could happen under the existing center plan that the property is currently zoned as. So under this HR zoning, there's a maximum height of 20 meters. Floor area ratio doesn't apply in this particular site, but in this particular proposal, you could divide the site into 2 separate lots and ultimately build within 2 separate buildings, an amount of development netting just over 30,000 square meters of building in a 6-story form, given that 20-meter height limit. So here's a perspective of what that first option would be in the 2 different buildings on 2 different sites. This one viewed from the southwest, so sort of with the harbor behind us, looking towards the northeast. And then this second view is actually sort of looking more towards the harbor. So the view from the northeast looking towards the southwest in those 2 6-story forms. A second option was also developed. Given the amount of frontage that this particular site had, you could actually subdivide the lot into 3 different properties. And that could result in 3 separate buildings netting just over 29,000 square meters of building, also in that 6-story form, given the 20-meter height limit. So from the same perspectives, this is the view of the site from the southwest, looking more in towards the city from the harbor. And again, those three buildings looking from the northeast towards the southwest and towards the harbor. So I mentioned that the center plan zoning and designation did in fact apply in this case, but the enabling policies under the old Dartmouth plan. So why is that? There's a policy within the center plan that allowed for projects to transition gradually in. So I won't read this out, but in essence, what it says is if an application came in before the center plan was notice of the intent to approve that plan came into effect, that basically we would honor that to say that, well, you're underway, the work is ongoing, so we'll let that application continue into the process so long as it finishes within 24 months of the adoption of the plan. So that magical date is in fact coming up in 2 weeks' time. It's September 17th, 2021, and that is the last day when an application that was could be considered under the old policy. So at this point in the process, we've obviously deemed the application complete, done the review, we've had some public engagement, written the staff report, and we've had notice of motion from Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council, and here we are at the public hearing. If council were so to choose to approve this development agreement, we'd then enter a 14-day appeal period where any affected residents or the applicant themselves could appeal the decision of council. And assuming that things were still on the go at that point, the applicant could then apply for development and construction permits. So this is the proposal itself. This is the site plan. So we see the building A, the 9-story building up in the top right corner of the site of this drawing, and building B, the 11-story component in towards the left. Vehicle access coming in down from the site, accessing towards the south, and more of a mid-rise component in all other places with commercial uses fronting Rosedale. So again, a summary of this development, the proposed building A towards, again, the top right of that previous drawing, 9 stories with a 3-story street wall, growing up towards building B, which would be 11 stories with a 4-story street wall, 205 residential total units, and a significant amount of landscaping, both on top of podiums as well as around the site, and primarily a shared private open space between the two buildings in the form of a courtyard. So as previously mentioned, policy 10.25 of the regional center plan allowed the application to be considered under the Dartmouth policies, primarily IP1 and IP5. And those policies require council to consider height, scale, massing, materials, traffic, site access, landscaping, as well as open space and amenity areas amongst the things that it needs to consider in making a decision on this development agreement. So the issue that staff held and the reason for its recommendation of refusal in the original as well as the supplementary report was this policy IP1C2. And it says that in considering zoning amendments and contract zoning, which is development agreements, council shall have regard that the proposal is compatible and consistent with adjacent uses and the adjacent development form in the area in terms of use and bulk and scale. So compatibility is certainly a reasonable test within planning circles. Consistency is a much higher bar. So consistency, in essence, that largely anything new should be the same or similar to the development that's happening surrounding it. And that's where staff couldn't get there. It's not to say that this is not the right spot for redevelopment. It's not to say that this isn't a well-designed project. But in terms of the proposal being compatible and consistent with the surrounding community, that resulted in the staff recommendation for refusal. Public aid engagement did take place in this application. We did some consultation through a mail-out notification and a hybrid public open house in PIM held on October 30th in 2019. Lots of feedback from the community in terms of concerns about the increased traffic volume, concerns about the amount of parking that's proposed on the actual site itself, and as well as the height and the density and the mass of the building in comparison to the existing surrounding context. There are also a number of non-substantive amendments that could be made in this particular development agreement. Non-substantives are amendments that would have to be ultimately approved by community council, but could be done without the need for a public hearing. So there could be modest changes limited to a certain percentage to the maximum number of dwelling units permitted, a reduction in the common amenity space or the rooftop amenity space, the changes to the parking numbers, changes to some of the architectural requirements, and changes to the below grade and above grade setbacks to buildings A and B. Council, I would note that these non-substantive amendments are a little bit more liberal than maybe they otherwise, than maybe you're used to seeing or typically are. The reason for that being that, in essence, if this development agreement were to be approved, when the policy disappears, there'd no longer be an ability to make a substantive amendment. So the non-substantive amendments are a little bit more numerous in this, just to give the applicant a little bit more flexibility, and frankly, council a little bit more flexibility in making their decisions. Council just gave notice of motion for this application, and as such, the motion before council is to approve the proposed development agreement as set out in attachment A of the supplementary staff report from August 5th, 2021. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we want a presentation first from the consent, or is the staff? Council has some questions of staff first. Okay, Councillor Austin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Carl, for the presentation. I do have some questions of clarification. A good number of these were submitted to, came to me from residents. The driveway access coming off Floral, the developer does own a vacant lot on Hester Street right next to the church. And in the early iterations of this project, there was some suggestion of a connection there, be it pathway, be it driveway. Is it possible, if council were to approve this tonight, for the developer to end up making that into a driveway for part of this project in future? Or no? Would that not be allowed because it's set in the development agreement?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, the development agreement couldn't be expanded. It couldn't be made larger after this was done. That would not be a non-substantive amendment. So the only option would be to, after it was constructed or largely constructed, to discharge that development agreement and then seek some sort of access through some type of as of right development or permit. I'm leaning towards the answer being that not being possible, where we do typically have those rules where you can't access a more intensive use through a less intensive zone. So in essence, you can't drive through the single, more of an established residential community as a driveway to get to a higher order residential use. So I don't think that would be permitted in this particular case.
So that ER, I think it's 2 zoning on Hester to access the HR2 would preclude a driveway from ever coming through there.
I believe that's the case, Councillor. Yes.
Zoning. Yeah. Okay. Drainage off the site. What is the? I mean, it is a substantial hill. The site is developed in part. What is the requirements that around drainage from the property?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. So there's not a lot of specificity within the development agreement itself, and that's largely because that being a little bit more of a technical issue that's typically worked out through the development permit and then the construction permit process. The requirement would be that you need to balance the amount of stormwater coming off the site as it exists today, so pre-development stormwater, with the amount of stormwater that would coming off the site after the construction was finished or post-development. In this case, just in looking at the site, there is, there's a lot of building on the site, but that notwithstanding, a lot of it is soft landscaping. A lot of it is a little bit more permeable with planted roofs, landscape courtyard. So there does seem to be some opportunity to retain that. It does seem like some thought has been put into that, but it might be a question more that the applicant has put more thought into in terms of that next technical step if we were to go in that direction.
Okay, I will ask them when they present. Tree retention, the line along Hester Street in particular is, there's quite a good vegetative cover there. What are the requirements to retain trees along there? Because that is an important privacy buffer for the neighbors.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So there is a requirement in the development agreement policies or clauses that says that similar to the stormwater, that if council were to approve this development agreement along with the development permit application, they would need to submit a detailed landscape plan. So right now, that detailed landscape plan would need to be consistent with the plan that's attached to the development agreement that council's seeing, which, as you correctly note, shows several trees and shows trees to be retained in certain perspectives around the site. So there is going to be a requirement to, the development officers will hold them to that, to say that, well, at minimum, you're going to need to provide for these trees that you've said are going to be retained. But there's not, and also the fencing that's listed on there, there's some screening, fencing, things like that are denoted on the site plan. Those would all have to be within the landscape plan, though there is some flexibility in terms of the exact number, the exact location, the species of tree, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Precedent, if council were to adopt this, I mean, we're in this funny place in between center plan and the old plan, would this create a precedent for other large buildings in the area for other applications?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, largely I would say no. I mean, as I mentioned, September 17th is the day when we are done with the grandfathering of older planning applications per the center plan policy. There are no others sort of in this neck of the woods that we, Harbour East Community Council could expect. And subsequent to that, things would be developed by the center plan rules, which council will be debating again once in the fall, but the package A rules are already set. Heights in this neck of the woods, they range, I believe, from 14 meters to 26 meters in portions of the north side of Wise Road. So that's sort of the range that one could expect, where these buildings in terms of their height are 29 meters and 37 meters respectively, to give you an order of magnitude.
Okay, thank you. The alternative center plan options, 29,000 square meters, 30,000 square meters. I'm sorry, I haven't been able to, internet is not working very well tonight here either. What is do we have a square area for the proposal that's before us now as compared to those?
Yes, so I thought you might ask that question. I looked it up beforehand. So it looks like the gross floor area of this project as measured by the architect is 23,300 square meters.
So they could actually get more potentially under the center plan.
Right. So now the buildings that I showed you, the two concepts, those are not those are not netted out from elevators and corridors and stairwells. So I did an 85% floor space efficiency. So if they were 85% efficient, that would take that 29,500 average down to about 25,000. So 23,300 in the proposed, 25,000, just over 25,000 within the center plan. So they're comparable, but yes, it does appear that the center plan would allow for more.
Okay. So my last one of clarification, I realize the no recommendation on this one is primarily on that consistent measure. Did this one pass all the traffic engineering requirements in terms of the access onto Floral Avenue, which is a pretty quiet street right now?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, the TIS was reviewed by our engineering group, and they were okay with the levels of traffic this project produced.
Yeah, and I presume that the access off Floral is primarily due to elevation. One of the questions that I got was, well, why don't they come in off Rosedale?
Yes, I believe that's the case. They were looking to come in at the low end of the site, which is a common thing. You can avoid a lot of ramping internally, which eats up a lot of floor space, which usually means that you have to go deeper and ultimately make an more expensive building, which means more expensive units.
Okay, thank you very much, Carl, for your detailed answers. That's the end of my questions of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy, you're next in the list for questions of clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Carl. I'm going to talk about rats. So I was wondering if you could tell me what the onus is on developers to help mitigate the risk of like a rat infestation to surrounding areas with the demolition of the building. And secondly, what course of action residents can take if they do notice an increase of pests and rodents after this development starts to happen. What can they do?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. I'm a little bit rusty on my construction mitigation bylaw, but there is a construction mitigation bylaw, and in essence, it's meant to do exactly what it says: mitigate the impacts of construction. That includes the rodents, the vermin that sometimes escape from buildings when old ones are being demolished. But it also goes further into areas of preventing damage on adjacent buildings for blasting, or preventing construction happening at inappropriate hours of the night, or the lights, or the vibration, or dirt control, mud control on adjacent streets, construction traffic and parking, where you're parking, control access of the sidewalks. So all of those aspects, including the vermin control. And I apologize, I don't know the specifics of exactly what they have to do, but they do have to take preventative measures in advance of demolition happening, and that construction mitigation plan is approved by, I believe it's our development engineers that have a look at that and look at all aspects which could impact adjacent residents and evaluate it against the criteria that council approved. And there are requirements also to make sure that there is signage on site, not only talking about what is happening, but also providing 24-hour contacts in case of be it emergencies, things like that, or things that are happening that they should not be happening. Also, if blasting were to occur, and I know it's for blasting, I'm not sure if other requirements, I believe demolition as well, there would be a notification of adjacent residents that would need to happen to let the people know what is happening and the hours that they're happening and what they might be able to expect. And obviously, during throughout all of this, the underscore is also 311 is always accessible in terms of our compliance officers, and they respond to those types of calls quite frequently.
Thank you.
That is for you, Councillor Purdy. Councillor Kent, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a couple of questions. I would like to go back to Councillor Austin's questions around tree and vegetation and such. So what we would normally hear it as often referred to as a non-disturbance area. And so I just want some clarity from you that there are in fact that kind of zone. And is it reasonable that they are, is it a case where if they disturb it, they have to put it back? Or is there a requirement that they don't disturb it? I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chair. I'll get that answer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. So this would be different from a non-disturbance area. Non-disturbance area is very much sort of don't touch it, stay away from it. There's something particularly, usually environmentally sensitive to this area. This is an area which is in essence that the intent is to retain trees for the purpose of sort of screening, to mitigate the views and the impact, the noise, the light, whatever it is that a larger building might produce. So again, the plan is on the plan. It says those trees are to remain. Now, the development officer does have a little bit of flexibility. I might suggest that the development officer, if on that next level of detail, when they're into the development permit, the construction permit phases, if a tree is exclusively on the land of the owner and they find through their construction plan that they're not able to retain that, the development officer has the latitude and the flexibility to say, okay, that can go, but it needs to be replaced. It needs to be replaced with a tree of that size, or it needs to be replaced with 3 trees half its size, or whatever they may consult the urban forester to talk about what a like for like sort of comparison would be. But that sort of gives you a sense perhaps of what the process would be.
I think she's frozen again.
Hello, Becky. Can you turn off your camera and try us again? Earth to Becky. Coming Eastern Passage. Can our technical staff please reach out to Councillor Kent to see if we can get her reconnected, please, before we proceed any further?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will reach out to Councillor Kent and see if we can sort the connection issue.
I saw her flash up again there momentarily. She's off again. Must be windy in the passage today. Hello, Councillor Kent, are you with us?
I'm back. I'm back.
All right, you may want to try and keep your camera off to keep your connection a little bit stronger.
Okay, and that's okay for a public hearing. I'll just when my dogs, I have to mute, so I will be here.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know if you heard any of my question. It was around stormwater management. I can't recall the grade of the community in that area. Is it relatively flat? Is there very much of a hill? Stormwater management is often the very difficult thing to work with for residents in the area when contractors are not really following a stormwater management. In particular, some very difficult ones in District 3 that have really caused a lot of concern not only to getting into the Halifax water infrastructure and then ultimately into the lakes. So I know there isn't a lake there, but residents don't want a yard full of sediment. Can you just give me a reminder what that might be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think I caught most of that. To the first part of your question, Councillor Kent, there is some significant grades on the site. As you go towards the south of the site, it does get pretty steep. Attachment B of the development agreement is the site plan, and it actually has some contour lines towards the bottom. So you can see how close those contour lines are, and that it does slope down fairly significantly towards Hester. Now, with that being said, where there's some pretty significant trees down that hill, I would imagine that trees help keep that slope up. So I would imagine that the applicant, the developer, the construction work, it's going to be in their very best interest to keep as much of that as they possibly can in order to retain that slope. That being said, beyond the requirement to balance pre and post development stormwater, the applicant might be in a better perspective to answer questions in terms of what is their specific plan and have they had a look preliminarily as to how close they are to balancing sort of without any other mitigation, or what specific sort of interventions they might be doing to make sure that they're doing a good job to keep stormwater on their site.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, any further questions from anyone else? Councilor Mancini, have any questions at all for the staff?
Nope, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now we'll hear from the presenter, please. We have a presenter present. We have Chris Crawford and Rob LeBlanc, I believe, listed to make a presentation. Please identify yourself and you take the floor. You have 10 minutes. Can you hear us? Can you hit *6 to unmute your phone if you're talking to us by telephone? We see the presentation. Okay.
Mr. Chair. Thanks for that. And thanks for Carl's presentation. And I'm going to take the first half of the presentation. I'll pass it over to Chris, who will walk through the architectural design. So if we go to...
Please identify yourself, Rob, for the record.
Yes, sorry. It's Rob LeBlanc from Fathom Studio, part of the applicant team. Next slide, please. So I'm going to take some time. I'm going to principally try to address some of the requirements from the municipal planning strategy, which you will be evaluating this project against tonight. In specific, more is policy IP5 and the conditions there. under, and I'll speak a little bit about the context and planning, the site conditions for the specific site. So if we move to the next slide, I'm going to move from sort of a large scale, and then we're going to zoom into the actual site design. Next slide, please. So that policy IP5 talks a little bit about the contextual issues surrounding development agreements as part of the old or the current old land use bylaw for Dartmouth and municipal plan. This site itself, the rings indicate a 1 kilometer ring, which is roughly about a 12-minute walk for people under 60 years of age. And the second ring is a 2 kilometer walk, which is about a 25 kilometer, and that's as the crow flies. So we'll use that to talk about the walkable nature of this site and access to facilities. So we've got, within a 1 kilometer walk, we've got easy access to 3 schools, and within 2 kilometers, we have access to 4 schools. And next slide, please. Shopping, of course, along Wise Road, within that 1 kilometer radius, we've got Victoria Road, Windmill Road businesses, and of course the growing corridor of Wise Road, including the Dartmouth Shopping Center. If we move just a little bit outside of that, we take in the shopping at Highfield Park, downtown Dartmouth, and in fact, downtown Halifax, if you consider taking the ferry. And of course, Micmac Mall is just outside of that 25-minute walk radius. Next slide. In terms of recreation opportunities, these are just some of them. There's some that I haven't even picked up on here, but all kinds of recreational opportunities within easy walking distance of many sports fields around the area. Of course, Dartmouth Common, Brightwood Golf Course, Maybank Fields, and Dartmouth Waterfront Trails and Lake Bannock Trails. So it's an exciting spot in the center of recreation. Next slide, please. And of course, within an easy walk for transit, we're within that 1 kilometer walk of the Dartmouth Transit Hub, which has about 20 routes with access all over HRM. And outside of that 1 kilometer, within 2 kilometers, we are very close to the Dartmouth Ferry Terminal, Alderney Gate Hub with 9 routes, and the Highfield Terminal, 7 routes. Just outside is the Micmac Transit Hub. Next slide, please. One more. And as Carl mentioned, the existing site context, I worked on a plan for Wise Road in 1991, and it was looking at, how to transition from used car lots and car lots to residential community and these industrial type uses. And Rosedale, as it currently sits, is kind of a remnant industrial area backing off of what used to be a lot of used car lots in the rear. And it's quite an industrial and office intensive use that backs directly onto residential neighborhoods. One other note in there is the proximity of Sobeys, just 1 block away through the through block of Rosedale. So Carl's already gone through the planning context with which we're measuring this development this evening. And so we've used those planning guidelines to help guide the design and layout of this development. And if we go to the next slide, looking forward, under the current planning regime, the HR1, as Carl mentioned, allows a 20-meter or 6-story development, just 6 meters or 20 feet off of the rear property lines. And what Chris is going to present to you tonight is the alternative of, rather than sprawling buildings at 6 stories across the entirety of this site, We've chosen to keep pushback from property lines. We've chosen to keep a central landscape courtyard and to put that density in some towers placed very close to Rosedale, away from residential areas. So it's just the difference of two different approaches. And as Carl also mentioned, that under center plan, we've done an analysis too, where we can actually get more units, more density, but we're doing that at the expense of sprawling much closer to residential buildings, which we'll show in some of the next drawings. Next slide.
Just let you know, I'll have you 6 minutes of your 10-minute presentation.
Okay, we're going to pass this on. Just these diagrams show this. If we go to the next slide, that's what's possible under center plan. And here's what we're proposing with 29-foot and 78-foot setbacks from the Hester Street properties, preserving that the tree buffers and the setbacks. And I can speak to stormwater management in questions. So next slide. And I think this is we're going to pass through some of the stuff in since we're out of time. But if we want to come back to wind implications, and the next slide is solar implications, we can certainly come back to these, and we'll go to the next slide. And I think that passes it on to Chris. And the next slide. And Chris is up.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So I'm Chris Crawford with Fathom Studio, and yeah, I'll walk you quickly through some of the design. I think this site plan just really captures, in a way, the essence of this project. I think it's important to note that, you know, this DA will lock this project into this level of green space. And I think on one of the previous slides there, it was 65% of the site was maintaining as green space. It's a very unique approach, and I think that's the great thing about development agreements with a very unusual site configuration. We're occupying very little of the site, and we're doing that by, you know, carefully placing a little bit of density in two of these mid-rise forms with 9 and 11 stories, and that's by pushing, you know, the development away from the property boundaries as much as possible. Next slide. I won't get into the yield. I think, yeah, as Carl mentioned, we're developing less than we could in the future with center plan, and would like to continue down that road. So we'll go to the next slide. This is a really important site section, I think, just for context on where we've placed the tower that is closest to Rosedale Street in relationship to Hester Street. And we've certainly been cognizant that Rosedale is getting closer to that corridor zone in the future, and a little bit of height there is much different than in the rear yard of the properties on Hester. Within the center plan, we could maintain this 6-story building right up in the backyard. So I think with the tree buffer and transitioning that we're doing with the massing, this is a much better solution. Next slide, please. So yeah, I think this really captures something that is quite unique to the site. We've got this very generous open green space that is right on Rosedale Street. This provides walk-up units, retail that's active to the street. There's, you know, a green space that the entire neighborhood can enjoy. This is not a private space. With the retail, people will be able to kind of meander through the site. I think this is really why we have, you know, some sections of this project that are a little bit taller. Next slide, please. Here's just showing a mock-up of the massing of what could be done within center plan. You know, we can fill the entire site with many buildings. We don't need to get into why that's, you know, not as good as the previous slide, but I think there's been a lot of bravery on the developer's part to allow us to do that much green space. Next slide. And this is a view down Floral Street. You can't really see the changes we made to the taller section of this, but yeah, I think with the treed-in sections and landscaping and its proximity to Rosedale, I think that yeah, this will be really a really favorable view and still transitions into the neighborhood well. Next slide, please.
1 minute remaining.
Okay, I'll skip through the elevations. Next slide. Next slide. And then again, a view from Hester Street. You can see the building at the one that's closer to Floral Street is just kind of poking above the residences here. But if you go to the next slide, this would be that 6-story massing that would run through the rear yards of all of these properties. And while we've condensed a small area to be a little bit taller, we really feel like this would be a lot of eyes on those backyards, and that our solution is substantially better. Next slide. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm happy to answer some questions and chat further on the strategy that we have here. But we've got a nice active streetscape, walk-up units on almost all faces of this building, extensive landscaping, and yeah, we're really excited at the opportunity that this could happen in our neighborhood.
One point of clarification for Becky: we do have 2 parking garage entrances. One's on Rosedale and one's on Floral. So if you want to ask questions about that, we can
answer those.
All right. Well, thank you, Rob and Chris, for your presentation. I believe Councillor Austin may have some questions for you as a local councillor. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Fathom for the presentation. I do have 3 questions of clarification. The first is the tree line on the back along Hester. Could you expand on what I asked Carl earlier? What is the intent along that property line in terms of tree retention?
If we get to go forward with the DA, we get to keep those trees. Those trees will soak up anywhere between 150 and 300 gallons per tree of stormwater. So they're an important part of the stormwater strategy, and it would be our intent to keep them.
So you're not planning to cut some of them. The plan is to keep the
plan is to keep all of them. We may have to trim. We have to get an arborist in because we may be into cutting roots. So that means we have to cut some of the canopy so that the tree doesn't die. So we give the best chance to the tree to survive. So.
Okay. So affordable housing is something that's come up a couple of times. I know this is, we all know that, it's not something the municipality can compel. I'm wondering if some developers in town have accessed that CMHC program. I'm wondering if there's any move in this project to include affordable housing.
Yep, I spoke to Joe before this, and the commitment is still there. Depending on what program he's able to access, it's between 5 and 10% of the units would be affordable.
And would this be one of those ones where it's a certain percentage under market rent?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Any idea what that would be?
I can't. Joe may be on here now. He might be able to. If not, he'll be on at the end and can answer that question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So then the last one, I was hoping we could bring the slide deck. It went by so quick, I really didn't have a chance to actually see it. That the middle 2 slides where you had the center plan version, like up in the sky, it was just the white and blue, I think it was, like just the building massing.
Yep.
And then the next one was the center plane. Could you put up the first one, or the one was your proposal? Could we get that up again? I really didn't see it.
Sure. Yep. So as that's coming up, the staff looked at 2 different options, and there's a number of ways to carve this cake. If we pulled the floral cul-de-sac in slightly, you could potentially get a 4th building in there with the frontage requirements that you'd need for that. So there's any number of ways that you could do that. The main requirements is the under center plan is that no building dimension over 64 meters, that we have a 6-meter setback from all adjacent property lines, and that we have a step back at the 4th story of 2.5 meters, I believe it is. So just keep going back 2 from here, I think.
It's 12 and 13 if you're looking for a number.
Yeah, just keep going. No, the other way. Sorry, backwards.
Page 12.
Yeah,
that's
there.
the one.
One more. There you go.
Keep going.
Yeah. Can we go to that one again? The next one.
Yep.
These 2. Can we go one back? Just one back.
There we go.
So this is one of the potential options that you could build under center plan.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
And so could we flip to the next one?
Yep.
So
you see the difference here. We've got a 4-story backing onto Fraser Street, and the density has been pushed. So rather than going six stories right in these people's backyards, we've pushed off quite a bit more than we would have to under center plan.
So it looks, if I'm reading this correct, I would have liked to have seen these ones beforehand, because they're better than those cross sections that were in the staff report. So where you're closest to the backyards on Hester, that 29 feet, it looks like, and the other one is 19 feet.
Is 6 meters.
And, yeah. So then throughout that gets wider. On Fraser, it doesn't look like there's as much of a difference, just because the nature of that house on Fraser being right on the line.
Yes, that's right. We're a little more than 20 feet on Fraser. The podium is 20, and we're pushed back just slightly from that.
Yeah, Fraser, they will also have if this were to go ahead, they will also have a retaining wall along that line.
The retaining wall, it's probably on the top closer to Rosedale, we're kind of at grade, but the retaining wall starts to drop. It depends on how much of the existing retaining wall. There's a 20-foot retaining wall in the backyard there now. We don't know yet when we take the industrial building down whether we can preserve that wall or whether it would have to be rebuilt. If we can preserve it, then there's really no change to what's there today. And that would be our hope, is that way we can keep all the trees without touching that.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And if Joe could, at the end, remember to comment on the affordable housing piece, because it's certainly one that's come up.
Okay, all right. Can you go back 2 slides? I have a couple questions for you. One more. Okay, right there. I see that there's a right-of-way corridor to Hester Street. And if you go back 2 slides to your proposed alignment or presentation.
Yeah.
The other way, go the other way. Keep going. One more. I see nothing connecting to Hester. So is that going to be a green belt, or is that going to be a right of way to a path? That green belt you're going to keep there, is that going to become a municipal parkland, or does that stay as green belt parkland for the residents of that property? Or could that become a neighborhood park entrusted and kept by the property owner, or does that be invested with the municipality? I'm kind of curious what happened to that right of way to Hessler.
Yeah, so it's still there, but because we can't touch that as part of a development agreement, you're not allowed to do DAs on R1 properties. Its future use would either be to take the water and sewer and stormwater through to Hester, so it just becomes an easement for this development. Or there was some talk at one point of taking the heritage building that's on this site and putting it on that lot, though we don't know if it could fit. So it has one of 2 futures. It's either a future residential one R1 with an easement through it, or it could be parkland as well. Maybe Joe can chat about that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
But I think Sam also had the question, could you ever put a driveway into this? And there's no intention to ever come off Hester with a driveway into this development.
But could it become a trailway if you want to have a greenway connection, Hessler up to Fraser? And
yep, it could.
Okay, that clarifies questions for me. Any other further questions from any other member of council before we go to the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I have one.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Kent.
I'm just curious, and forgive me if I've missed it, but you're speaking of a heritage property. So if that option doesn't pan out, what's your plan for that heritage property?
I think the developer's plan is to relocate it somewhere where we can get it under power lines.
And it's not a registered property. Just to clarify that.
Thank you.
Well, it's just an old building, but not registered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an old house that would be nice to maintain.
To find a second home for. Yeah.
Okay. Any other further questions of members of council before we go to the public hearing? All right, I'd like to open the public hearing now. And before I do so, we just want to remind the people had to pre-register as of 4:30 yesterday to speak at tonight's public hearing. We have a number of people have signed up for this presentation tonight. And before we go to them, Mr. Clerk, also want to acknowledge the correspondence has been received to date for this matter as well. Just want to clarify that has been circulated to all members of council.
Correct. There have been several pieces of correspondence for this matter. All have been circulated to members of community council.
Thank you. I just want to have that acknowledged as part of the public record. Okay, so we'll open the public hearing now. I have a motion. Do I need a motion to open the public hearing, Mr. Clerk?
I know, Mr. Chair, we can just proceed to open the public hearing.
Thank you. I have a list of 15 names here before us. Hopefully they're all able to connect with us. If you are connecting with us, remember I'll call your name out in order as I have it on the page here. You hit star 6 to unmute your phone, and you have 5 minutes to make your comments known to the community council, okay? So first on the list, I have Chris Cox. Chris Cox, are you on the line, please? Is Chris Cox on the line with us? Hearing not, I'll go to the next speaker and we'll see if he joins us later. Richard Arab.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If people, don't we have that issue where if people are watching us,
there may be a 30-second delay.
Yeah.
I see Mr. Cox is down on the line with us now. So yes, I'll acknowledge that 30-second delay. So Mr. Cox, I see you've joined us now. Hello, Mr. Cox, we can hear you.
Hi there. Sorry, I don't know why my mic wasn't able to unmute.
Okay,
so yeah, I'd just like to add my comments.
All right, go ahead, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, so on this development, I've looked at the plan that they're submitting and obviously the alternative that they have the right to build under center plan. And I think that the plan that they're submitting in this case tonight is far superior to the option under center plan for a number of reasons. I think it both not only is more beneficial to those living in the area in houses at the moment, as it doesn't encroach as much on their lots, and the parts that do get closest are more human scale. They're not as tall as they have the right to build under center plan. So I think that that's smart of them to think of the community like that. But not only that, but I think it's important to think of the families and young professionals who are going to live in those buildings, who are going to be living in them and renting them. I think that their quality of life will be much better when they can live in a taller building that can therefore have more green space and not be just a big clump. We have the technology, obviously, to build tall buildings. So I don't think it makes sense to not take advantage of that and to waste what would be beautiful green space and would be much more pleasant space to live if the buildings are tall and there's green space provided to the residents. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Are there any questions or clarification from any members of council for Mr. Cox? Hearing none, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cox. Thank you for joining us tonight. Next I have on the list is Richard Arab, followed by Bruce Fraser. So Richard Arab, you're on deck now. Please hit star 6 to unmute your phone.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm calling in support of the project, in favor of the project as presented. I would thank both staff and Fathom Studios for their presentation. I thought it was very informative and very helpful. I've read the staff report and certainly have a much better appreciation for the project now in full context with what's been presented. I would begin by saying that I'm a 56-year resident of HRM in Halifax, and I've been a landlord and property owner several properties in HRM for the past 20 years. And so I come to this from the perspective of a landlord, of a property owner who deals with tenants all the time. And it goes without saying that the situation currently in HRM is, I would suggest, as bad as it has ever been in terms of availability versus demand for rental units. So I'm excited about the prospect of adding an additional 200 units to the stock of residential units available in Halifax. I think it's much needed. It's an important time for it, and it's something that is as I say, it's never been as bad as it is, and there's a lot of good people looking for space who can't find it, and this is going to assist and go a long way in helping that situation. In addition to that, I have to tell you that I'm quite impressed with the building design, and it really came to light for me in watching the presentation today even more. This, to me, is really a beautification project for the area and for the neighborhood. From what it is now and what it could potentially be as of right, as was described in the presentation by staff and by Fathom Studios, I really do think it's a beautification of the neighborhood. The green space is certainly a very important part of it, and the setbacks are certainly a very important part of it. I think it incorporates what is an industrial space currently into a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, in a very thoughtful way. And I think it's respectful of the residential neighborhood behind it and around it. And in addition to that, I am impressed by the features. I'm impressed by the thoughtfulness of the design in relation to not only the surroundings and what it can bring to the community. I think there's commercial aspects to this project that I think will add substantially to the neighborhood. I think it offers the opportunity to make the neighborhood a little more of a niche neighborhood with the walk-through space that's available to the community. I think it's going to be very attractive. It's also very impressive in terms of location and the walkability that was discussed, and I thought that was a very important feature. It is about as perfectly located a spot as one could expect or one could want from a tenant's perspective in terms of accessibility to transit and to all that's available around it, to the community, to the ferry system, to the transit system, to the
1 minute remaining
retail and other aspects. I think that's a very attractive aspect. And the only other thing I would comment on is it's a very stark contrast between what is permitted as of right and what is being proposed here. And I think any community-minded person, any person in the neighborhood who sees what could be and what is being proposed versus what could be as of right, it would have a fairly easy decision to make. I think this is positive in so many respects. For all those reasons, I wholeheartedly support the project and encourage councillors to approve of the agreement. Thank you kindly for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arab. Are there any questions for Mr. Arab from any members of the council? All right, just checking with you there, Councillor Kent, make sure you're still connected with us. I see you're muted, so I want to make sure you're still there.
I am, sir.
Thank you. All right.
Yep, no, it's for me. Thank you for the comments.
Okay, thank you. Next in the line, we have Mr. Bruce Fraser, and then we have in the queue, I have Bill Delaney and David Fallows. So, Mr. Fraser, you have the floor, sir. I see you're connected with us. Make sure you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you. My name is Bruce Fraser. I'm a member of Stayers Memorial United Church, 44 Kessler Street. My concern is water leaking into the sump pump room at Stairs Memorial United Church at 44 Hester Street and its development and its relationship to this development. It is noted that the rear of the church, which is approximately the east end, where that room is located, abuts the property of the Rosedale development. There has been chronic leakage of water into that room from the east wall and footing. Various things have been done to help this leaking problem. There is a sump pump in that room. Patching material has made especially for concrete was applied to the cracks, but water is still seen. On the exterior of the church on the east side, there is a rubble of loose rock and clay extending east of stairs going uphill to the next street, Floral Avenue. This rubble slope extends to the stairs foundation, so probably it was put there after the stairs foundation was laid, which was done about 1957. That is, the area near the foundation would probably have been flatter during the construction process to allow access to the foundation during construction. When Floral Avenue was constructed, the loose rubble was probably just pushed towards stairs, extending onto stairs property right to the foundation. It may be well that water from the street above is running into this mass of rubble, rising the water table at the foundation and contributing to the leakage. It is not obvious what the natural shape of the land was before that street construction was Floral Avenue. Now that there is a planned development on Floral Avenue, it would be desirable to have the water flow addressed. This is in fact a property. There is in fact a property, a part of the new development to the south of Stairs parking lot, extending down the slope to Hester Street. This may be a possible exit for water. That would include two sources of water. One, rain falling on the streets and walkways of the new development. Two, rainwater falling on the area of the porous rubble slope above stairs. Most of that slope area is within the boundaries of the development. It may indeed be found that the rubble was put there in the 50s without consideration for the effect it would have in putting water into the stairs foundation. Question: what steps are in the development plan to address this serious water issue for Stairs Memorial United Church? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fraser. Are there any questions or points of clarification by any members of council for Mr. Fraser? There are none. I'm pretty sure the presenters at the end of the presentation will have an opportunity to provide any further information. I believe stormwater was mentioned earlier as a concern, so I want to make sure that that point is noted. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fraser, for your participation tonight. Next on the queue, I have Bill Delaney, followed by David Fallows. Is Mr. Delaney on the line with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Simon Rossiegel, Legislative Assistant. The producers this evening have been attempting to connect with Bill Delaney and have not had success to that end. We will communicate if Bill Delaney does join the meeting.
Okay, then we'll go to next in line, David Fallows, please. David, hit *6 to unmute your phone.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay, thanks for letting me speak tonight. Thanks to everybody involved in the process. I'll be very short. I think I'm just going to reflect what Mr. Chris Cox and Richard Arab already sort of previously outlined, but I just wanted to kind of voice my support for this project. I was raised in Dartmouth, and I love the city. I love to see projects like this, and I think it's really going to help revitalize the city. It looks like they've, really made an effort to come up with an option that makes the buildings, aesthetically pleasing while maintaining, the green space. It looks fabulous. So I think this will be a huge improvement to the look of the neighborhood, and of course, while adding 200 much-needed residential units. Clearly we need extra supply. Everybody knows we need extra supply of living accommodations in Dartmouth and in HRM in general. And obviously the units being offered at affordable rates is greatly needed as well. So again, I just wanted to voice my support. I'll be short and I'll leave it at that. So thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there any comments or questions or clarification from any members of council? Mr. Fallows? I see none. We'll go to the next speaker. Next speaker I have on the list is Tony Zareski, to be followed by Sam Reeves. So Mr. Zareski, you now have the floor.
Hey, how's it going, Councillor? Thanks for having
me. Hear you fine. Hear you nice and loud. Thank you.
Great. I'd like to second what most are saying here in support of this development. I agree that, you know, now more than ever, we need these to be approved so we can get started with development and get these units on board. It's evident that there's a shortage. These projects will help fill those gaps, and you know, I like this DA more than I like the center plan option. I think it fits in with the neighborhood better than, you know, what he could do as of right. I know the amount of work behind what he's put into this, and the fact that he's going to include some affordable units and provide all the green space. It's the right move for the site. I mean, I'm not sure if you've been down Rosedale. This is a huge plus for the neighborhood. It's the right spot to do it. Close to grocery, close to downtown amenities. You know, there's some feedback saying, well, you know, these units don't solve the housing. Well, they do, because the people that want to live there will free up. Wherever they're living now will be now available for someone else that can afford what they have. It's just, we need more of these to free up other housing, and it'll be the more and more of these that we approve, it'll help. And so I'm full support. I hope you guys approve this. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, when you're finished commenting, can you please mute your phones? I see Mr. Fowles is not muted, and Tony, you just finished, Mr. Zareski, you just finished speaking, so please mute your phone so we can, thank you. I see that's now been done. Our next speaker I have on the list is Sam Reeves. Is Sam Reeves online with us? Sam Reeves to be followed by Chris Smith and Chris Kotozin, I think. Cosentine, I believe it might be pronounced. I see Sam Reeves is on the line. Could you please hit *6 to unmute your phone?
Yes, thank you.
I can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm just generally echoing other speakers, as in Tony, and supporting this development. As I noted, you know, just shortage of units within HRM, so it's providing over 200 much-needed units in the proximity of the development to amenities such as grocery stores, even just public transit, shops in the Dartmouth area. I think is very beneficial for the future residents of the building. And then just the developer is developing it more aesthetically pleasing, doing kind of more setbacks and adding, I believe, 65% green space. I think is benefiting the development, also the community around it. So I just wanted to voice my support for the development as a whole, and I hope it gets approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please mute your phone, Mr. Reeves. Thank you. Next we have on the line is Chris Smith. Chris Smith, you present. I see you're unmute your phone, please, and join us.
Hi there, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I just want to give a quick call and make a few quick points in support of this this application. I think everyone's noted the fact that this is an amazing location, you know, close to transit, a new Sobeys, and other amenities near, not far from the sportsplex and along transit routes. I've been a Dartmouth resident my whole life, over 40 years. Stopped counting at that point. And this area needs the investment. It's a mature and residential area that could use some density and some improvement in a lot of ways. And I think the design looks good. Like Tony and Mr. Arab have said previously, and the others, the design is actually preferable in my mind too, to have slightly, larger, more tower-like buildings with a step back relative to just having big blocks going pretty much to the edge of the properties. And within that, I do really like the fact they're going to keep them, the trees and the landscaping and create a buffer between the existing residential neighborhood and the development. So I do think it's designed well and thought out well. And we do actually need the units, and it's in a great location. We have to make the developments that we approve desirable for people. If we stick a 200 unit apartment building out past Timberley somewhere, not near amenities, not near transit, not near city core, then we're doing the wrong thing. So I think we need to consider that when we're looking at existing neighborhoods and what's appropriate and what the opportunities are. And I think this one, while it may not conform exactly to the existing old uninvested neighborhood, I think this one's very important to gentrify the area. And I do think, like I said, that the buffering of the trees and some of the common area in the design will actually allow for sort of a mitigant around a little bit extra height and the step back. So I guess those are the main points I wanted to bring up tonight. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Chris. I don't see any comments or requests for comments for any members of council, so we'll go to the next speaker. I have Chris Horstein, please. Chris Horstein, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. You're now on the line. I see you're now available. Thank you.
Thank you. So, my name is Chris Horstein. I've been a resident of Dartmouth, specifically Hester Street, for the last 10 years. Currently, Rosedale is it's a bit of a dump. It's really nice to see an improvement to the neighborhood and to the area with this development idea. I know my neighbors and I, we have discussed the potential of this development, and I know the major concern by a lot of people was the mature trees. I'm really glad to hear that those are being kept, and every effort will be made to ensure that happens. The setback, I think, is great as well. It's not going to tower over the houses. I'm not sure if any of you are aware of the topography, but from Wise Road down to Windmill, it is a bit of a grade. So it'll be nice that there'll be that space there. Overall, I think the development's pretty compatible with the neighborhood. I can see all the green space there and the walking trails and the gardening, and I think that'd be just exceptionally beneficial to the area. I think it'll have a really nice park-like feel, which I think would be a huge and welcome change for the hardscape asphalt and concrete that is Rosedale currently. And I also much prefer this design as opposed to what could be put forth under the center plan idea. I'm in favor of this development application, and as a resident, I think it'll be really beneficial to the area. I think it'll bring a lot of renewed interest to the area as well, and it will greatly improve the neighborhood. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Chris. I don't see any members of council for point of clarification. Thank you. Next on the line, I have Scott McKnight, followed by Paul O'Connor. So Scott McKnight, please join us. Please hit *6 to unmute yourself, please. I saw your name briefly online there. Scott McKnight, are you with us, please?
How's that?
I see you now, sir. I see you now.
You getting voice as well?
I see your face and voice, yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. I've been a lifelong resident of Dartmouth. Actually started here in 1949, only most recently moved out here to Wellington. And having lived in Dartmouth and seen the kind of development that's going on, it's a recognition that everything sort of moved east, built up along the circumferential highway, such as Horizon Court. And unfortunately, properties such as this got left behind. And I think the proposed development is great. Those of you who are perhaps not familiar with the area would quickly recognize that it's a accumulation of car lots, used car lots, materials for cars, repairs, etc. And the time has passed. Many of these now have relatively low value, and it's better now to perhaps change into a more intensive residential development, such as proposed here tonight. That's why I'd like to submit a recommendation to the council to support the proposal and to move forward with a development agreement. On another note, I noticed that Mr. Purvis had commented about being compatible with the surrounding properties, mentioning Fraser and Floral, but at a very short distance away is a major high-rise residential on Boland Road and Wise Road. And there's a number of others that are going to be constructed fairly soon along Wise Road back towards the McDonald Bridge. So I think this is part of an overall renewal of this area, which formerly was, first of all, perhaps a semi-industrial park, and then the sort of residual commercial. Now I can see it gradually restoring back into a very nice residential neighborhood, which I think is very necessary for Dartmouth to get it away from the small town and perhaps become reintegrated into the overall city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKnight. Just to let members of council know that the previous registered speaker, Mr. Bill Delaney, has withdrawn his name for speaking tonight. So to let you know, that name is now off the list. Next I have on the line would be Paul O'Connor. Mr. O'Connor, I see you're now on board. Please identify yourself, and you have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and councilors. Am I online?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Thank you, thank you. My reason for voicing my opinion tonight is I am an investment property owner just in that area. I have been driving Rosedale now for the last 14 years that I've owned the property. It is a multiple unit. This is a much improved aesthetic look to an otherwise industrial. When someone said in the presentation that compatible, the consistency, well, I think it's maybe in the best interest to change the compatible consistency of the neighborhood and start building projects such as this. The developer has proven in the presentation that the curtain walls along the existing homes would be a lot better than what the center plan would allow, with the towers to make up the density that he needs to and is required in today, as you know, when you advertise an apartment, especially in any area. I just had a vacant 2-bedroom in that area. I might have had 200 different emails and texts. A lot of good people that I refused. And it's hard to do that. So we do need more density. The towers are a great option. The curtain walls help with existing homeowners. In my experience in the last 14 years, it's a great neighborhood. You have a new Sobeys, you have bridges, both bridges within minutes drive. You have parks, you have a bus, you're on major transportation routes in the area. It's just a great area, and this would be a huge welcome addition. And let's hope that it gets approved and he can start to build and make the area a great place to live. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor, for that. Next I have in line is Jordan Nufoff. Did I pronounce that right? Please identify yourself, sir.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Jordan.
All right. Yeah, so first off, I just want to say thank you for...
Please identify yourself for the record first.
My name is Jordan Newhoff. I'm a resident of Hester Street. I own a heritage home on the street. I've owned it for 1.5 years, and I have absolutely fallen in love with the charm and the character of the neighborhood, its constituents, and the home itself. I want to say this up front that I'm a proponent of high density affordable housing for the HRM. Obviously, we have a bit of an issue with rental units and housing availability, and projects that increase the density are a very good thing, provided that they're done carefully, that they maintain the character and history of our cities, that they include a high percentage of affordable housing, and that the increased pressure on existing infrastructure is properly accounted for. Unfortunately, I don't feel as though the 9 and 11 story proposal meets these ideals. It is significantly taller than any other building in the area by a number of stories. The reduction in privacy for the homes on Hester Street and the other surrounding streets are definitely a concern. And as well as the increases in wind and shade for those properties from the tall stories. The height of those buildings does not fit the character or aesthetic of the neighborhood. I agree that there's definitely some room for change, but going with something this large so quick might not be the step that we need. The original proposal doesn't include enough parking for all residents and their guests of the building. This very well could have an effect on the parking availability of my street. That is a concern. I can also say that runoff is already an issue. Being directly downhill from the property, we do get a significant amount of storm runoff from the Rosedale property. The previous residents of my property actually had to install a French drain in order to account for that runoff. And it is already close to its maximum capacity. If there's any additional runoff, I would probably have to make further changes to the backyard, and my neighbors would probably have to do the same. I am concerned with the tree line. There are old tall trees, a single line of old tall trees on the back of the property. They can't be easily replaced. Replacing a single 40-foot tree with 3 10-foot trees is not nearly the same level of privacy or the same aesthetic. It will take decades for those trees to reach the same height. Cutting roots and cutting the canopy would undoubtedly have an impact on the health of the trees, as would the stress of construction blasting. Some of this is going to be necessary in any respect, but I would sincerely hope that those trees there are protected and kept intact, and ideally added to. I believe that the center plan is here for a reason. I would hope that any approved development would not exceed the 6 stories that are laid out in the plan. I would also hope that the developer has the conscience to still include the vegetative buffer zone and protect the existing tree line if this proposal is rejected and we move forward with the center plan. I believe that there should be a little more nuance to this conversation than either this proposal or the maximum allowed by the center plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Are there any members of council for points of clarification or questions for Jordan? I'm hearing none. Thank you very much for your input, sir. Next I have on the queue is Casey Malone, to be followed by Tim Richardson. So Casey, are you online with us? Please hit *6 to unmute yourself. See you there. You have up to 5 minutes. Please present yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Casey Malone. I'm a resident on Hester Street. I've been renting a flat here for 5 or 6 years, and I really love this neighborhood. I wanted to kind of shadow what the last speaker just said. And I said this at the community meeting that we had back in 2019, I think it was, just because they can do this in the center plan, this kind of bigger like lower but more mass. Doesn't mean that they should. Just because it could be closer doesn't mean that it should or that they need to. And kind of touching on, I don't know if it was a developer or who was speaking at the time, but they mentioned the bravery in trying to maintain that the tree line and the landscape kind of in the back end of Hester. I would really encourage that regardless of what plan or what option is chosen, that they could keep that landscape there. Yes. Regarding affordable housing, I don't know that 5% is significant of that unit. It's definitely, we need more affordable housing, and I would really encourage them to not look at a percentage of a market value. That's not, we know that that's not the way to talk about affordable housing, especially when the markets are going bananas like they are right now. From all of the views and the images that were seen and shared, I'm really disappointed that I didn't see anything that really shows the perspective of the height from Hester Street, coming from the viewpoint of like Jameson side. That's the area that I'm in. I'm just a few away from that church. And as we were chatting, I was grabbing something from my kitchen and I looked out my window and I can't imagine how many more stories that would be above that. And while I respect that it's way better, I think, than that density of, you know, how many ever wider units backing the property, that height is gonna impact my garden and my neighbor's garden, as well as those big trees that we have. They're not gonna get the same amount of light and sun, and definitely will be disrupted from any development. And so just kind of before I wrap up, to touch on you know, the idea and the plan, like the plans. I do like the landscape version that was suggested today more than the other things that they were proposing. But I'm just not confident that the other things they're proposing is a finished option. I really think that they could improve that and keep some of that landscape and some of that setback that they had. And then the very last thing I want to speak to is more about this whole process. I don't know who is responsible for this, but I really encourage when there's going to be public hearings like this, for that to get sent to renters, not just property owners. If it wasn't for Sam's tweet 2 days ago, I wouldn't have known about this. I haven't been able to touch base with a lot of my my neighbors, and I think it's really inappropriate isn't the best word, but I don't think it's fair. We have a lot of renters, and if city council and if developers want renters to believe that they don't hate us, they need to start including us. And so it was really disappointing to, yeah, like the first time there was something, it was like a postcard, it was sent in the mail. It was visible for everybody who picked up their mail to see, but this was sent to my landlord who doesn't live here, and I don't open his mail, so I wouldn't have known. So whoever can maybe look at that policy or that procedure, I think that really needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Casey, for that. And I'm pretty sure the clerk has taken note of that comment about public notification, especially for tenants and not property owners. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments or clarification of any members of council for Casey Malone? I don't see any. Thank you very much for your time. Next we have on the speakers list, I have Tim Richardson. I see Tim is on the line with us. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, folks. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm really, again, not a long-time resident of Nova Scotia, but again, really appreciated in moving here some of the challenges I've seen, obviously, with the housing. And I think as again, a person that involved with business here, and we've had people on my team have been trying to relocate to Halifax. I'm just a promoter of anything that can help, within reason, anything that can help free up some more space that we can encourage more people to come to what a great space. We've been here a year and we're really enjoying it. And I really appreciate that we've got to start opening some doors for some new opportunities for rentals. I think this looks like it was done with some pretty good care. Again, I think that there has to be some larger density impacts put in place. So I think this is a bit of a step out. I think that the what was shown as options here, it definitely looks like the better option beautification wise, with lots of view for the green space. And again, with attention that they are going to try and, from what was said, try and hold on to as much of the existing landscape and trees and things. I think that it looks like there's a real strong focus on that. And I think with just anything that focuses on affordable housing as well, understand that there's maybe no one right answer on trying to free up more affordable housing, but I think obviously adding volume is going to help. But then obviously there's a commitment here to put affordable housing in this spot. I think it's good that we're not trying to just put affordable housing in only one location. I think this shows a good diversity of that. So that's my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson. Any comment or questions from any members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time, sir. I have next on the list Alexander Arab. Is Alexander online with us tonight? I see you online there. Please unmute yourself, hit the *6 so you can join us. Thank you. I can see you unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please identify yourself for the record.
Yep, my name is Alexander Arab. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. My family owns property nearby on Wise Road. I believe this development will be a great addition to an area that is bound for growth and currently needs some investment. The proposed development is much better for the area compared to the as-of-right development under center plan. And in this instance, you have a developer that is willing to forfeit buildable square footage and incur additional construction costs to build a more attractive design and more tenant-friendly development. There's a lot of planned mixed-use projects along the Wise Road corridor, leading right to the bridge, where there are plans for buildings up to 30 stories just a kilometer away. And in 10 to 20 years from now, when surrounding properties get built up, this property will look perfectly in place, and I think any height concerns will be forgotten. I just want to voice my approval for this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arab. That is the end of my speakers list. As I noted earlier, Mr. Delaney has withdrawn his name for input. I've also seen a request from the property owner, the developer of this proposal, wishes to make comment on the concerns that were raised. I believe the applicant has a 5-minute rebuttal time. I believe the applicant through Rob and through Chris and Joey can probably use up that time. So so he can dial in. Has he been given the number or do we call him? Just want to clarify that process, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that he would have to dial in, which may, I understand that our producers are working on that at the moment. However, there may be a time delay in order to accommodate that request at this time.
Okay, well, I believe in the chat line I provided the phone number for the owner, so our staff can call him to connect with. In the meantime, I'll have Rob to respond to any of the points that were raised during the public hearing tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. And I think I'll touch on just a few of the concerns. The traffic one we talked about, that there's a parking garage entry off Rosedale. So that's going to take at least half, if not more, of that traffic. The stormwater management one is something that we'll be addressing deeply in the design. We do have lots of setback from the property line. A lot of those larger trees sit actually on this property owner's yard within that 6-meter buffer. And the intention is to keep the wall exactly where it is and keep the trees. There's a good mix of green ash, Norway maple, there's some poplar. So we have every hope that we can preserve those trees. We will need to get an arborist in to help us with that work. And the stormwater management, there's enough setback now with the new parking garage and the building being pushed back from the property line that we can address a lot of the stormwater that's coming off of this building. We also have that big landscaped podium area. The intent there would be to create enough depth to store stormwater from roof leaders and from the site. We're also looking at some green roof solutions on the upper roof podiums to reduce runoff as well. And lastly, just the construction mitigation. We're going to have to follow HRM's guidelines, which are fairly specific in stormwater management, sediment and erosion control, blasting, and vermin management. So we'll have to address that all in the next stage if this is approved. So I think I'll end it there. I hope that addresses a lot of the questions. And if Joey is available to come online, maybe we can hear from him at the end here.
Okay, we still have a few minutes left in your 5-minute allocation. So before I ask for any comments or questions from members of council, I'll see if the property owner developer can call in to make any comments on his application.
Hello, Councillor Hensby. This is Simon Ross-Siegel, the legislative assistant. I've just gotten off the phone with the property owner, and I have stopped the timer. We are at 3 minutes and 14 seconds.
Okay. And is he calling in now?
That's correct. He is calling in now.
1 minute bathroom break, Mr. Chair.
Once, I assume some members of council may have plenty of questions of clarification before we close the public. As soon as we close the public, we want those questions done before we close the public hearing, I assume.
Yes, that's correct, I believe.
Let's know, Sam.
Can I ask Mr. LeBlanc a question while we're waiting?
Sure, shoot away.
I assume so, as long as we kept the 3 minutes and 14 seconds for the property owner. Go ahead, Councillor Kent.
Yeah, for giving me this opportunity. I'm curious if you were aware of, or if the application team was aware of the runoff and the flooding issues around the church, and if you've given that any thought for mitigation.
Oh, yes, I'm glad you brought that up. No, we weren't aware of it, although we did hold a community meeting in the church basement there. It seemed a little damp, but this development really provides an opportunity to address some of those concerns. I suspect just north of the church site is kind of a high point on the road, and I would expect that the cul-de-sac that's there could either be draining down onto this property. So we'll be looking at improvements as part of the overall master plan, and knowing that helps us inform the stormwater management procedures. So it was good to hear.
Thank you.
Have any luck with the property owner?
We have provided the information, and we're just waiting for the property owner to join us by telephone.
You told him it was pronto, right?
I could try calling him in. I've got a pretty good speaker here. That might work.
Okay, go ahead and try that.
Let me just try.
Hi,
how are you? There, Joey, we're on. I think I'll put you close to the speaker. You're good to speak.
You have 3 minutes and 14 seconds, sir, remaining of the time that was allotted for the rebuttal.
3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Please identify yourself for the record. Please identify yourself for the record, please.
Joseph Arab, A-R-A-B.
Okay.
Maybe I'll get right into, instead of repeating myself, to the questions. I guess answering Sam's question regarding the affordability. So we plan to have anywhere from 5 to 10% of the units. And to answer your question, depending on the programs, it could be up to 30% below market rates. It could be below median income. It depends on the program and what's available, but definitely committed to putting at least 10 to 20 units in some realm of that affordability into one of the programs. It's a project, I've owned the property for 16 years. It hasn't really transformed much in that time. I think it's really time to change the neighborhood. There's been some additions to the Sobeys and EHS that have made a big difference. I really, really believe that this is a better project with the green space and keeping, the distance around the perimeter of streets and keeping those trees in the back portion of the lot. We really think it's just a better project. I don't know how the other option could be really better suited for the neighbors, but we want to put a good project there. It's well needed. It'd be a great transformation for the street and the neighborhood, and I can answer any questions that either Sam or anyone else has.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arab. Are there any further questions or comments or clarifications by any members of council before we close the public hearing? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just the affordable housing piece, 20 units, and that would be under one of those CMHC programs, so a percentage off affordable.
Yes, it would be one of the CMHC programs. That's where we're thinking. Regardless, I would have some affordable units, but the ideal would be to use one of the programs. And again, that could be a bit more on the percentage of the units, but it all depends on the program. The program could change from now in a couple of years, but right now it would be one of those programs that we're looking.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further questions, members of comments and councillors? Here none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Mr. Councillor Austin, so moved. Is there a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Purdy. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Public debate. The local councillor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll start by putting the motion on the floor. I move that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council, 1, approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially of the form as set out in attachment A of the August 5th, 2020 report, and 2, require the agreement be signed by the property owner within 240 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any of the other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end.
Second by Mancini.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Mancini. So, and thank you to everyone who participated in this hearing tonight. It went, we're into the virtuals now, and this one actually went pretty well, all things considered, especially with 15 people ringing in. So thank you to the clerk's team for that. I've been making some notes on this, and I want to acknowledge we did receive a fair bit of correspondence as well on this one, particularly from immediate area residents. I fully respect staff's opinion and expertise. The 5 years I've been on council, there's only been a handful of times where I've not supported a staff recommendation when it comes to planning, because generally things are pretty worked out by the time it gets to us. There's been the odd time where I haven't supported a development. And then, just lately, there's been the 2 applications that have come forward in my district that where staff have recommended against. I supported the one, and tonight I'm going to support this one as well. And my reason for doing that is fundamentally rooted in policy. I mean, I think there are different ways to look at compatibility and consistency. This is a very mixed area. It's got small homes on 2 sides of it. It's got kind of your missing middle fourplex, triplexes, sort of apartment buildings on one side. And then it's got some really large format commercial. Like the footprint of the Sobeys is not a tall building, is absolutely huge. And then the area is one that's the context is going to change considerably. This building will, in the future, right across the street, the Wise Road properties are zoned for 26 meters. So you're talking an 8 to 10 story building on those properties in future. So this building will not be alone in terms of the future context in the area. And so I think there is policy reason. I respect staff's opinion, but there is policy reason. But there's also and this is part of our role as council, there's also just the practicality of this. Looking at the design that has been prepared versus what the developer could do under the center plan, this is far and away, I think, a better result for the neighborhood than what we would get under the center plan. Having that height in the density, where it is about the same floor area, in fact, less based on the calculations that our planner did, that it's less dense, preserves more of the area, and is much more gentle to the homes on Hester and Fraser and along Floral than what some of the potential alternatives are in terms of setting back from that property line, making sure the vegetation isn't disturbed. So I think this is just a superior design, and I think in the end it will actually be a better fit for those neighboring residents than what the central plan could produce. And it is unfortunate that it is a bit of a binary choice, but the reality is that if council says no to this project tonight, we will not see a central plan project, because they proceed by as of right. So we won't have this sort of control in the future. It would be up to the developer. And I'm going to take the option that preserves the green space, gives a good setback. I'm going to take the certainty of what I have in front of me, because that certainty, I think, is better for the neighborhood than the risk we potentially would run in an as-of-right scenario. So I think this would be a good fit. I think it's on the whole, this is going to be a good thing for the neighborhood. So I would urge my colleagues to support it. But I do acknowledge the feedback from the area that primarily came through correspondence. We had 2 speakers tonight from the area. The feedback, it was a bit of a mixed bag. There was folks that were, yep, this is good. There was folks that were in a bit of a practical mindset. This is I don't really love this, but I think it's better than your alternative. And then there was folks who just they didn't want any part of it. So there was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of that feedback that wasn't immediately evident tonight in terms of the public speakers. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I would urge council to support this.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Next in the queue, I do not see anyone in the queue. Anybody else to speak? I have a couple comments if no one else wishes to speak.
Mr. Chair, I have a little note in the chat asking to speak.
Okay, I thought that was for Mr. Brown. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I will be fairly short because my internet is coming and going, as you've seen me drift, probably not seeing me drifting in and out. But I I'm in favor of this application. I think Councillor Austin has done a tremendous job in making sure all the bits and pieces have been tended to from a perspective of the local councillor, and staff I think have done well. I'm impressed with the development team on this. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do in relation to an as of right option versus the current design that's on the table for us to consider today. Yes, it's not necessarily typical of that area, although we do know that some higher density projects are coming along. But what I see this as, and we've seen it out on near the Kennedy Drive area in Councillor Mancini's area, that this is an investment in the community. It's an investment of a nature that will bring other investments in the community, and we value the homesteads that are there. We value the original homes. I'm so pleased to see tonight the developers value in the house that is on that property, with an intention of trying to have it remain somewhere else to be utilized. Bones of those houses are often like the best part of them compared to maybe some of the homes that are being built now. But so I'm really pleased with that. I think it's been very thoughtfully managed. The driveway setbacks, the driveway considerations, the setbacks to the other residents, the stepping down of the higher density into pieces of infrastructure that is more in keeping with what the homes are like. I think that's very thoughtful. The green space, when you look at the as of right version to the current one in relation to green space, which often is the pieces that are eaten up quickly in cities. I think this is a great way to retain that. Obviously, no surprise to anyone that housing stock for me is a big issue. I will probably be facing some of these same kinds of decisions in District 3 as they come along, and it will be challenging sometimes for some areas who are not traditionally exposed to the higher density, but I think it's where we need to go. I'm pleased to hear that there's some affordable housing stock that will be within this. Lastly, I would encourage the owner, and I'm not sure if you were on the line. I don't think you were on the line when we were speaking about the church, the issues with the water. I think that particular issue would be such a good news contribution back to the community beyond the scope of your project. I often look for those kinds of things when developers are bringing something new and different and perhaps a bit contentious or something different that people have to grapple with that's in their neighborhood. But when a developer can turn around and really create a solution or create something new in a neighborhood, and to show that there is that commitment to the community beyond just the scope of the project, then I think that's really, really positive, and I think that's your ticket for that. And I hope that someday I hear from Councillor Austin that church has been dealt with. I've been in the church for a number of events with scouting groups, and I hope that it has a
We're losing you, Becky. We've lost you.
Yet in that community, but it continues to have that water problem. I don't know if you can't hear me. I'm done.
We heard most of that. You just need to adjust your bunny ears to get the antenna working. Anyway, just before I go back to Councillor Austin, I just want to make a couple comments from the chair, if I may. I believe that the proposal we've seen tonight is quite a remarkable improvement of what could be. I think that the old would have, could have, should have. What they could be doing on this property, maximizing and pushing it out to every square inch and square foot possible to maximize their floor footage. I think they're showing a great deal of restraint and maximizing that instead to a greater green belt area, open space area for not just for development, but also I believe for the neighborhood. I believe I'd like to see that connectivity to Hester, just so the people on the next street down can enjoy some of that green space as well. And I do hope that the old home or the heritage home that's in the area can be moved and preserved. I think that'd be a great accrement for the developer to show that there is still value in some heritage properties. So I'll be in support of this proposal that's before us. Councillor Austin, you have a question. You want to come back about affordable housing matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much a question, just I gave up the mic with this piece of my notes on spoken, so I just wanted to tie up the loose end, because I did get a number of people who referred to, well, does the project have affordable housing? If not, then you shouldn't approve this. And I did want to acknowledge that the limits that we have as the municipality right now, we don't have inclusionary zoning, so there's no ability for us to compel a certain percentage of affordable units in this project or any other project. That doesn't exist right now. Hopefully the province will give us that ability with the positive recommendation in the Housing Commission report, because their previous answer the last time we asked was no. So hopefully no is becoming yes, as it seems to be, as reading the tea leaves, that seems to be what's going to happen. But the lack of affordable housing in this one shouldn't be the reason that we say no to this project, because it's not, one of the speakers made the point that there's a transition that happens in terms of, well, if you have new housing stock coming in, people who can afford it move into the bright, new, shiny, and they free up spaces that then other people can move into. And right now, with the city growing the way it is, we desperately need affordable housing, but we also need market housing. We need housing of all sorts. We need all sorts of units. We are in shortage across the board. And so the one should not preclude the other, because if we just start saying no to every development application that comes forward because we can't guarantee affordable housing in it, that is stepping on the gas hard on a crisis that's already bad, except it's stepping on the gas and throwing ourselves right off the cliff. So we need all sorts of units, and this will go a long way to doing that. And if the 20 affordable units that we can't guarantee, but the developer has indicated that they will pursue pan out, all the better. Thank you.
And on that point, market supply and demand will, in fact, if there's a lack of supply, there's a high demand for apartments that will drive up the price. The more supply for apartments will drive down the demand, and perhaps the price will become more equitable and affordable. So that's the marketplace, and let's see how it goes. I'll call for the question then. All those in favor of the motion that's before us, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Rebecca, can we hear you down there? We get your microphone muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
In favor.
All right, thank you. All right, so unanimous in favor. I think we should take a 10-minute recess break, because we have some other agenda items, but I think we need a little bit of a restroom break. What, 5 minutes is that? We come back at
5's enough.
At 8:45, which gives maybe 11 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will put the break screen up now, and we will be back at 8:45.
Okay, thank you. We're almost back for that designated time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we are ready to go whenever you're ready.
Is everybody back online? Let's go if everybody's there.
I'm here, Mr.
Right, thank you. Okay, I see everybody present and accounted for. Let's resume our meeting. Let me know when we're back live again there, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You are live.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those for being patient with us for tonight's extended play of a Marine Drive East Halifax Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council. Next item on the agenda we have is correspondence petition to delegations. I believe correspondence has been circulated already for the earlier matters. Is there any other correspondence for any other agenda items that the clerk should make note of?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, in addition to the correspondence which was circulated for the two public hearings this evening, I believe there was also another piece of correspondence circulated for one of the reports subsequent to our discussion on the agenda.
Thank you. Are there any petitions that to be registered tonight by any members of council or by staff? I'm hearing none. We have no other presentations booked for tonight. No information items to be brought forward. Next to be staff reports. On the agenda, 13.1.1, case number 23401, non-substantive amendments to an existing development agreement for 249, 251, and 257 Windmill Road in Dartmouth. May I have staff come forward and make that? Should we get a motion on the floor first before we get staff presentation? How you want to proceed with this, Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's in this case, there's no strict policy, so it's up to your discretion, Mr. Chair.
Let's get the motion on the floor first, and if we have a presentation with staff, okay, then we'll go into any questions. Okay, Councillor Austin, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll put the motion on the floor. I move that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council 1 approve by resolution the proposed amending development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in attachment A of the June 8th, 2021 report, and 2, requiring the amending development agreement be signed by the property owner in 240 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end.
Thank you. We have a presentation by staff on this matter.
Good evening, Chair. I do have a presentation ready.
Thank you, Melissa. Go ahead.
How does that look?
Thank you, Melissa. Your screen is showing and all good.
Okay. So good evening, Chair and Community Council members. My name is Melissa Evis. I'm a planner with the current planning group, and tonight I'll be presenting case 23401, which is a non-substantive amendment to an existing development agreement at 249 to 257 Windmill Road in Dartmouth. So the applicant is Stephen Adams Consulting Services on behalf of property owners Olympus Property Management. As I said, the location is at 249, 251, and 257 Windmill Road, and the request is to amend the existing agreement that currently applies to the property to allow an extension to the commencement and completion dates for the development. So the site context, so the map on the left shows the general site location, and we can see that it is north of the McDonald Bridge and just south of Tufts Cove along Windmill Road here. On the right, we see the site boundaries shown here in red, and to the east is the southeast is a federal building, the DRDC Atlantic campus. We have some low density housing across Windmill Road, and there's a 70-unit apartment building immediately adjacent to the site. This is the existing site. It is an apartment building. It's set back from the Windmill Road by a couple of parking lots. The development agreement also regulates this 2-unit dwelling that also fronts on Windmill Road. In terms of policy, the site falls mostly within Package A of the Regional Center Secondary Planning Strategy. It's primarily zoned HR1 within the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw, and a small portion towards the Harbour is zoned R4 and C2 within the Dartmouth Land Use Bylaw. In terms of an MPS designation, it's designated high order residential under the center plan, and again, that small portion towards the Harbour is designated residential under the Dartmouth plan. So there is an existing 3-story, 207-unit apartment building on this site, and that 2-unit dwelling that I mentioned. Center plan policies 10.27 and 10.28 allow council to consider granting the time extension. Bit of history on the existing agreement. So the development agreement that currently applies to the property was approved in 2009. It allows this 12-story, 103-unit residential building shown here on the right. In addition, so that's in addition to the existing uses on the site. The original construction commencement date for the project was January 2015, and a completion date was January 2020. A time extension was requested and granted in 2019, which resulted in a construction commencement date of February 2023 and a completion date of February 2026. Due to labor and supply chain issues caused by the pandemic, the applicant feels the project is unlikely to meet those current commencement and completion dates. And to that end, they're requesting council to extend the commencement date of the development by 1 year and the completion date of the development by 2 years from the date of registration of this agreement. In terms of public engagement, the level of engagement completed was consultation achieved through providing information on HRM's website and signage posted on the site. I didn't receive any feedback from the community, and the web page we put up got about 272 views. Staff determined that the request meets the applicable policies, and as such recommend that Community Council approve the proposed amending agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Are there any questions or comments for any members of council? Just if I can get the screen back down so I can see everybody's faces. Okay. Councillor Austin, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, this is just a motion, not a public hearing, so I'll just go right to debate. I don't have any questions of clarification on it. I think Melissa's presentation covered it all off. This is a minor extension of an existing agreement based on the extraordinary circumstances we all find ourselves in. So, I mean, everything like the application we just approved, there is going to be this spillover window of projects that have old development agreements where they have a chance to actually proceed. What I will say, I don't know if the applicant is watching or if they're online, is don't come back, right? This is the whole point of having a development agreement that has a time limit is so that if planning circumstances change, the thing doesn't go on forever. Planning circumstances have changed. We have new zoning coming in. This property has zoning now on it that wouldn't allow this project. So if it comes time to, if they come back looking for another extension, I would be pretty hard pressed, given that the whole point of timeline is so that agreements don't last forever as circumstances change. I would be hard pressed to extend it. As it is, because we do have this spillover time with the center plan and with COVID and everything that's happened, I'm okay with it, with this request, but don't come back.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Any other comments or questions from any members of council? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Councillor Kennedy, didn't hear you there. Just want to make sure you're online.
In favor.
Thank you. All right. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you. Next item of business is case item number 13.1.2, case number 23609, a non-substantive amendments to existing development agreements for Evergreen Drive and Cole Harbour. I believe this will be Councillor Purdy's jurisdiction. I'd like to put the motion on the floor and we're going to have a presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council approve by resolution the proposed amending development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in attachment A of the June 10th, 2021 report, and 2, require the agreement be signed by the property owner within 240 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, which is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end.
Seconder, please.
I'll second that.
Councilor Mancini. Okay, we'll go to the presentation. Melissa, you're on the floor. I believe it's Melissa on the floor. Yes. Go ahead. Your presentation is up. Go ahead there, Melissa.
Can anybody hear me? I'm having trouble unmuting here.
Yep, you're unmuted.
Yes.
Yep, and your presentation is full screened.
Thank you. So this is the presentation for case 23609. Daryl Jodry is the planner on this file, but he's unable to join us tonight, so I'll be walking us through the presentation. So it's another non-substantive amendment to an existing agreement. This one is at Evergreen Drive in Cole Harbour. The applicant is Lambie Construction, Inc., and the location of the project is Evergreen Drive Extension in Cole Harbour. The proposal is to amend the existing agreement that currently applies to the property to allow a 2-year extension of the construction commencement date. The general site location is shown here on the left. The site is north of Cole Harbour Road and west of the Forest Hill Parkway. And you can see the Cole Harbour Shopping Centre located here with the Sobeys and the Canadian Tire. On the right side, we have the site boundary shown in red. The immediate north is the Sir Robert Gordon Junior High School, and to the south and west is a low-density residential neighborhood. And to the east off screen here is the Cole Harbour Shopping Centre. Just some background on this one. The original agreement was approved in 2009 and it allowed 16 townhouse units. Construction was to commence within 5 years. So that would be by March 2014. So in 2014, there was another request to extend the commencement date to January 2016, which was approved. Then again, in 2017, there was another approval to extend the commencement date to August 2018. In 2020, there was another 1-year extension resulting in a commencement date of April 2021. The completion date was originally set for 20 years, so this has remained constant through with the amendments, and that still would be set to March 2029. In terms of policy, the property is designated urban residential under the Cole Harbour Westfall Municipal Planning Strategy, and the policies used to allow the development agreement are UR8, which allows council to consider townhouse units without direct access to a public street, and IM11, which is used to ensure the proposal is consistent with the intent of the planning strategies. These policies are unchanged and continue to apply to the subject site. Under the land use bylaw, the site is zoned R1, which allows single unit dwellings, home occupation, small daycares, and open space uses. Under section 6.2 of the existing agreement, the time extension request is considered to be non-substantive and may be approved by a resolution of council without a public hearing. To that end, staff recommend that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council approve the proposed amending agreement to allow the time extension. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are the members of council have any questions for Melissa?
Councillor Purdy does.
Councillor Purdy, go ahead. Yes. Let's see, your microphone's muted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. I'm wondering, I've got a couple questions, so I'm just going to throw them all out there. Number one, excuse me. Can you explain why another extension on this project that has already been extended several times in the past is considered a non-substantive amendment? And can you also explain why a 2-year extension is preferable to a 1-year extension for this particular project? Secondly, can you also explain the measures that will be used, the checks and balances to ensure that this development is going to proceed not only as planned, but also making sure that like coding is up to national codes, and there's like processes that need to be followed, and there's officers that are tasked for certain things. I just wonder if you could briefly just touch on that. And the 20-year timeline, is that normal for a development project to have a 20-year completion date? And I believe that's it for now.
Okay. So to address your first question, why another extension is considered non-substantive and why is a 2-year extension preferable? The development agreement lays out what the existing one that was approved in 2009, that lays out what is considered non-substantive. So unless council decides to amend the agreement to make it substantive, the time extensions will always be considered non-substantive as per the original agreement. The 2-year extension, that was chosen by the applicant. So they request an extension. Staff doesn't really have a preference. It kind of comes down to what the will of council is. So the 2-year extension is what the applicant has requested. How will we ensure the development will proceed as per standard regulations? So they still have to get building permits. So right now, I believe the problem is they have a building permit that can't be issued because of certain elements of the DA have not been satisfied. They need to have a condominium corporation agreement in place before the DO can sign off on the building permit. So that's the holdup at this stage. And so they're working through those details. So they would still have to get all their permits. They still have to meet the building code. They would still have to have sign off from our development engineer and our development officer. And the last one, the 20-year timeline for completion. I have not seen a project this small have that 20-year completion timeline. That's not to say that it is impossible or maybe warranted. I'm not sure what the circumstances were surrounding that first approval of why they needed that 20 years. I would say it's rather long in my experience, but yeah, it's if it's in the agreement, it's something that council considered and approved.
Thank you. Thanks for answering those questions. I know that this has been a frustration for residents in the surrounding area. It's 13 years an unfinished development site, and just not to keep all these, it looks like it's been abandoned. So I am really, really hopeful for a good development here. We've been talking about it all night. We're talking about it for months. We need housing, and we need units, and it all contributes towards hopefully a solution and some easing off of these pressures of high rents, high house prices, and just not enough stock for the demand and the need. So thank you. I'll be supporting this project, this development. Thank you.
Are there any further questions for any members of council? I have just a couple of comments, if I may, from the chair. I'm also very concerned about the another time extension. I think this is the 3rd time or maybe the 4th time I've seen or heard about this extension of this particular property. I even remember in my junior high school days going to Strawberry boarding about this vacant lot being there, and I always wonder why it didn't get finished with a couple more houses on the street. So that goes back to the 70s.
Wasn't yesterday.
So this property has been vacant for a long, long time, and I think that as Councillor Purdy said, the demand for housing in the area is so acute right now. You can put anything on there and it'll probably be occupied immediately. So I would hope the property owner would finally stop dragging their feet, put a plan together and get it implemented and get it started and get it completed and get it occupied. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That was unanimous. Thank you very much. Next item of business on the agenda. No members of council have nothing noted. No motions were filed. We have no in-camera business tonight to deal with. There were no added items for tonight. Do we have any notices of motion from any members of council? Hearing none. Public participation. I believe we had no one signed up for tonight's public presentation for this part of the agenda. So our next scheduled meeting is October the 7th, 2021. So at this time, I'd like to call for a motion to adjournment at 9:05 p.m. Councilor Purdy for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for everyone's participation tonight. It's been a long one, but a lot of things were discussed tonight and important projects moving forward. Thank you very much and have yourself a safe night, and hopefully the rain passes the rest of the night safe with no one having any flooding issues. Stay safe and be well. Thank you. Good night, everyone.